There are many times, there are many times I hear the voice, a voice of freedom calling me. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Politics of Kendra. I am your wonderful host, Kendra Muecke from Kendra and the Bunnies Music. I'm also all the Bunnies. Today, we have Matt Tarka. He's a singer-songwriter based in the Northeast. And welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kendra. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, for sure. So we actually met at the Millennium Music Conference in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in February, when we could still travel and tour and be in close quarters. We shared a showcase lineup at the Dead Lightning Still Works Distillery. And I was pretty captivated by your sound. I feel like you tell a really nice story and have a good stage presence. And yeah, it's nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so who are you? What's your backstory, Matt? Let's get right into it.
Who am I? Boy, that is the that's the $64,000 question.
Mm-hmm.
I from an artistic point of view, I am kind of a folk rock type of musician with, some elements of punk rock music, I suppose. Especially in terms of the way that I approach my instrument. I'm also a podcaster too. I love talking about music with people that are just generally passionate about people who tell stories. So I also have a podcast called Cover to Cover
Right on.
with Matt Tarka. Yeah, and that's been really kind of cathartic in its own way. It's that happened to grow out of an idea that I had probably about like a year and a half ago, and uh, it, the only reason really it got started was because I was in a pickup soccer game, and I
Mm-hmm.
I it was just such a fluky little thing. I tore my ACL in a couple of different places, so I was kind of
Ouch.
saddled for a little while and forced to just assess different things that I had in my own little creative hopper. And this podcast was just something that I really wanted to get off the ground, and literally just being immobile for a little while, and um you know just yeah, just mostly
Yeah.
immobile, I guess. It just really caused me to say, hey, you should really just do this. You can sit in a chair, you can sit at a computer, um and just kind of see how this evolves. I know I'm not doing a great job of telling the story, but it was just like it was kind of a fortunate accident in the
Yeah.
sense of, hey, here's what happened. Now it's time to just kind of like reassess what you're working on creatively, and focus on something that really makes you happy. So
Um, you actually had me on as a guest for a Cover to Cover Conversations podcast where we talked about the album by Animal Collective, Merriweather Post Pavilion. I really enjoyed listening to it. It's really well done. Your podcast is really well done. So, tell us the format of the show.
So the idea is to bring on a guest who, you could be a concert goer, you could be a musician, you could be maybe even a record producer. And the idea is to talk about either a song or a full length album that has somehow enriched or enhanced your life. It's a really kind of overarching sort of idea.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just been really fun. And what the idea behind that is I have a series of maybe 7 or 8 questions, and the idea is, how did you discover this band, um kind of what are your favorite songs on
Mm-hmm.
an entire record, and we just kind of spitball and go from there. Like, it's always about the guest experiences. I just try to hang back and just
Mm-hmm.
chime in if it's something that helps the conversation. But I just
Mm-hmm.
really like to hear from people in general as to why they connected with the record when they were,
Right.
say, 11 or 12 years old. And sometimes music sticks with you for decades and decades, so it's fun to hear
Absolutely.
those kind of cool stories.
Absolutely. Like the record that I chose to discuss with you, I'd been listening to since high school. And it's like some of those records are still going to remain my favorite no matter how many good ones I hear, how many excellent ones I hear now, because they have a special place in my heart because I've been listening to them for years. And I like what you said about each musician kind of, or each guest on your podcast kind of guiding the way the conversation goes. Cause like for me and you, we talked about lyrics the whole time. I was like, this
Yeah.
is why I like this. This is why I like this, the specific lyrics and like metaphors and stuff. And there is like a lot of the tonality that I really appreciate about certain albums, but it's almost like I have a better vocabulary in discussing like literature and lyrics. Whereas when you bring on a record producer, they're like, oh yeah, the EQ is very specific here in the mid range. And it's like, wow, that's
Yeah.
like super heady and cool to be able to witness why people like certain things. So you mentioned that you've got a punk influence in your singer-songwriter days, and what kind of punk bands? What do you mean by that?
Anything really by Jawbreaker or Green Day. So a lot of those Bay Area punk bands, I guess you could say. I think,
Yeah,
especially with the way Billy Joe Armstrong approached his instrument, I tend to kind of gravitate towards a lot of bar chords and whatnot
yeah,
with my sound. Not always too thrashy, but sometimes I try to like lose a finger, in one of the you know fingering of chords, and
uh-huh.
just try to create sort of like weird, like broken textures and sounds and whatnot. So
Yeah, I like
yeah.
punk music in that way, because it's just like so straightforward and it's so raw and unedited. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like polish to music these days, even alternative stuff and singer-songwriter stuff. And I like that fact about punk music. It's like, here are the chords, here are the words. We are angry at some sort of establishment, and it just creates this whole flavor that I can really get down with.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start your journey with music? What brought you to playing?
Mm. Well, I started off as a saxophone player when I was in fourth grade, and that continued, through middle school. I played alto sax in elementary and middle school band, and then I think I think it was probably when I was 14 or 15. And, I'm just going to like circle back here to another kind of like fortunate accident, in regards to sports.
Mm-hmm.
I started a podcast because I tore an ACL, and I picked up my first bass guitar because a good friend of mine, Jeff, encouraged me to, not just be part of a band that he was, getting started when we were kids, like 14 or 15,
Mm-hmm.
but somehow he coerced my mom to get a bass guitar for my birthday. So we went to this
Wow.
local music store, and kind of the rest was history. So I picked up a bass guitar before I picked up an acoustic or 6-string electric guitar or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I sort of like started, kind of gravitating more towards kind of electric infused music,
Yeah.
by the time I was 14 or 15. Yeah.
What do you find that starting with the bass helped you when you transitioned to the guitar?
Yeah. It's funny because of the way that I approach my instrument and the way that I kind of, utilize a lot of, bar chords, I tend to sort of like, lean towards more of those bassier notes or bassier sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that idea of playing, bass guitar never really left. I mean, so often I kind of will look for little root notes and stuff like that when
Mm-hmm.
searching for a melody and an idea. So yeah, even if I, spend, lots and lots of time away from just strictly picking up a bass guitar,
Mm-hmm.
it's always kind of etched in the back of my creative process.
Yeah, totally. I can see how that could influence your songwriting when it comes to the guitar because you hear those certain elements to the bass and transform that into something for the guitar. And okay, so your genre, you mentioned folk, punk influences, singer songwriter. When did you release your first music release, an album?
Hmm. Back in 2011, I cut a 5-song EP, this place called Innovation Station in Arlington. And I think the idea was to just put together it was like a yeah, it was 5 songs, but it was, some people said, oh, it's kind of a demo, I was like, no, this isn't a demo,
Right.
whatsoever. It's got acoustic guitar. It has a little bit of like, djembe percussion, and it has some piano. So while it's not like this big kind of boomy type of sound,
Uh-huh.
the songs that I recorded for that didn't really call for a giant, sort of orchestral or, just, like 5 or 6 piece band. So
Right.
uh, that EP is called Motorcycle Breakfast. And I handmade these CDs. I think it's still available on places like iTunes and
Hmm.
SoundCloud. But yeah, 2011 seems like ancient history. It's almost 10 years ago now. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
that was my first proper record, if you will.
That's cool. So you mentioned the demo. Do you think people said that because how many songs were included, because it was your first music release, or because of the amount of instrumentation? Because I know where you're coming from on that, and I can
Uh-huh.
resonate with that. People are like, "Oh, that's a nice demo," and I'm like, "It's an album. It's gonna be an album. It is an album. What are you getting at?"
I think the misconception of recording primarily acoustic music gives off the impression that it's unfinished, or if it's a
Yeah.
demo.
Yeah.
So because I primarily wrote music on an acoustic guitar, maybe that I just had this idea of, having it sound a little bit more stripped down and primitive. So I
Yeah.
mean, I was like, I had to laugh at the idea of it being a demo, but that, that music is, stuff I'm still really proud of it,
Yeah.
in the way I presented it. You know what I mean?
Right, I do know what you mean. So I'm about to release my third album. I brought on some people to play like lead guitar. I've got a friend who's playing some drums, have a friend who's doing like some production touches and piano. Whereas my first album, it was just me on the guitar and singing. And then I programmed some instruments via MIDI on the computer. And I'm just like super proud of what I accomplished with where I was at the time. And it's like that is the music. Let me ask you a question. So when it comes to being a singer-songwriter, when I was approaching my third album, I was like, I want to do this in the studio. Like I want to do it proper. And now the whole coronavirus thing happened. So I ended up recording at home, and I do know how to record at home. And I've done some like classes on it and stuff. So it sounds really good. But then I was thinking, also there's studio costs as well. So also I was thinking, I was like, wow, if most of my songs are pretty stripped down, what would be the benefit of going to a studio? And then the ideas I came up with were the benefit is you walk in, you play your music, and then the producer works their magic. So you kind of just get to be an artist fully. Um, and then the other thing would be if you're working with that awesome producer who just like hears your sound and they're like, awesome, let me kind of coax this out of you. What do you think is the benefit of recording in a studio?
I think you literally hit the nail on the head in that it takes a lot of pressure off of you as the artist to focus on the songs instead of worrying about whether or not the knobs are positioned correctly from a volume point of view. I think
Mm-hmm.
just being able to really focus on that craft at hand, and you know have a good circle around you in the studio to just really help you
Mm-hmm.
capture the vision that you want in the studio. I think that is a very worthwhile investment, contrary to popular belief for some musicians. Some people like to have that entire hands-on experience while they're recording. Personally, I like being in the studio. I like being a
Yeah.
studio rat, and just focusing on my craft, and bouncing some ideas off of people on the fly. So I see just a ton of merit in just working collaboratively with people, and so that distractions are minimized.
That's totally true. And I also feel like, okay, the collaborative effort is a huge thing because there's just a lot of growth that happens every single time I collaborate with someone on anything. even like this podcast right now, there's just a lot of tremendous growth happening by setting a goal and accomplishing it together. Another thing is, when do you know, like the producer can they're like, okay, do it again. When do you personally know when you got the take that you want, or you got the part of the take that you want? Are you just like, that's it, I'll see you guys tomorrow, or let's celebrate? Or are you like, let's do it 5 more times just in case?
I think every dynamic with a producer is very different. In my experience, I certainly listen to playbacks. Oftentimes, we might be in a situation where we comp several takes and get the best of the best and cobble everything together. But sometimes there have been really particular songs where, and it's kind of unique, where you don't necessarily listen to the playbacks of, say, your vocals. You do, say, a series of takes, and you just kind of allow a producer to kind of work their magic. Like, they're all the takes are pretty good, but sometimes it's just worth stepping away as an artist and not overthinking what you just crafted in the studio.
Right.
That's, I kind of like that, because I tend to record and make decisions on instinct. I love doing 5 or 6 really solid takes. And if that first or second one sounds really good, even if it's just laying down like your guitar parts, then I'd prefer to keep that rather than chase the demo.
Totally. Especially when I feel like the take has encapsulated the essence of the feeling of the song that I want to get. Because sometimes I'll do a take and I'm like, yeah, it's really good, but it's missing that like snap to it that I hear when I play it and perform it. So then I'll do another take of it. Have you recorded? So you recorded your first one at the Innovation Station. What about some other studios you've worked with?
So the past 2 EPs, these were both 4-song EPs, one being called Surely Late, the other Vision Hazy. They were both recorded in Savannah, Georgia, at Low Watt Recording with a producer named Ted Comerford. And both of those records as well were mixed by a guy named Mitch Easter at the Fidelatorium in Kernersville, North Carolina. Great, wonderful experiences. Yeah. So both of these EPs, Surely Late and Vision Hazy, they were recorded in Savannah, Georgia.
Breezes blowing mighty fair. Sneaking out your bedroom window, seems the coast is crystal clear. Prop your feet up and relax. Know you gave your level best. Your feet up and relax. Offer more than you suggest. It was the turn of a century. Hope you know what you meant to me. When all the houses of your friends burned down to the stone. With vision hazy. Do they even remember when the town packed up to leave? words that are coming weak. Will they even know what is right or wrong? Is there room to grow where you belong? Somewhere you could even stand tall. Melting in the sun, we laughed in Technicolor. It had just begun with a mural of Jim Morrison there painted on the rocks. I chose the road that led to this. I chose the road I could have easily missed. I chose the road that led to this. I chose the road I could have easily missed with vision hazy. 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 With vision hazy.
You and did you like you liked the production? You liked what the
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have another question. What was the title of your first release?
Oh, it was called Motorcycle Breakfast.
And what the heck does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, in different parts of, Pennsylvania and some other places, a motorcycle breakfast is basically a place where, motorcycle gangs or motorcycle clubs get together at various pavilions, and they essentially like get together at various pavilions and they eat a power breakfast before they go on a really long ride. So
Okay.
yeah, I just you
Oh.
see motorcycle breakfast signs, quite a bit in the summer and fall, where people just decide to congregate and they just ride the entire day. I myself am not an avid motorcyclist.
Have you been on the motorcycle?
I've never been on a motorcycle.
It's a pretty
I've never
intense.
I've never owned a motorcycle either,
Uh-huh.
but I always find like those two words, like just for some reason they go really well together. And the idea of going on some sort of like weird circuitous journey has always kind of appealed to me. So the
Uh-huh.
songs that I was cutting at the time just kind of felt like that type of journey for whatever reason. And it was, it just felt apropos.
I like the fact that it's your first music release too. So it's like you're gearing up for a long-term ride.
Most definitely.
Wild
Yeah.
adventure.
Yeah.
So you're based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Cool. And what have you been live streaming and stuff? This is kind of a contemporary question. During the Apocalypse 1.0, have you been live streaming and whatnot?
I have live streamed a couple times. And when I've live streamed, I've wanted to do it around some sort of a cause. So a few times that I have actually live streamed, I wanted to donate 50% of any sort of, dollars that were thrown my way in the virtual tip jar to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Really good cause. One of the first things I felt when the stay-at-home order started was I was like, I've been depressed on and off for years. I mean, it's kind of just an asset of my personality now, but I was thinking, what about the people who haven't felt those deep emotional places? I really hope that someone watches over them during this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's just mental health and mental wellness in general has been so overlooked for so long. And it seems like now things are starting to come to the fore a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a national organization in the US. There are various chapters around the US. And yeah, it just seemed like something that it just feels like the right thing to do because we're all in isolation, and being in isolation right now beyond your control just
Yeah.
it exacerbates, you know, the challenges that some people have day to day. And
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think the isolation thing is huge too. I actually went out to a live music concert yesterday, and it was kind of like, as I was walking up to people, I was doing this whole like kind of testing of the waters, like how close can I get to them? I know they're my good friend, but I haven't seen them. Can I give them a hug? And everyone was just so excited to be together. And I was just like,
Yeah.
wow. A lot of self-reflection during this time. Have you written any songs while you've been at home? Or new
during
projects?
quarantine
Yeah.
during quarantine I've written two. I think I have two songs. So I've been kind of the opposite of prolific during this time period.
Yeah.
You know, some things that I write tend to be a little bit of a slow burn. Although I
Mm-hmm.
will say that one song that I currently have right now in the quiver, I wish I had written a couple of months ago when I was in the studio recording again down in
Mm-hmm.
Savannah back in January before all this quarantine stuff started
Yeah.
happening.
Cool.
So yeah, so that was really exciting to have it, but at the same time I was like, damn, why didn't it show like reveal itself a few months before?
Right. Well, there's
But I'm
probably a
excited for
purpose to
it.
that. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
probably a purpose to that. So have you released those songs that you recorded down in Georgia in January?
No. I'm still debating on how to release them. What I'm thinking at this point is I have 5 new ones. Seems to be a theme, like kind of release songs as EPs in little chunks, so it sort of feels a
Mm-hmm.
little bit like a concept album. But I think this time around I'm going to do something different in the sense of release them as singles. What I did
Oh.
was I collaborated with a couple of different artists. So there's kind of you know, a painting that, you know, the artist used, you know, to kind of instruct his or her vision,
Mm-hmm.
you know, based on a demo that I put together.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't get like the whole like fully fleshed out song, but it's like, okay, here's the demo, here's some lyrics. What kinds of imagery do you get? So I sort of
Mm-hmm.
took a very similar, you know, approach to some questions that I have in my own podcast, and you know, tried to
Mm-hmm.
apply it with a conversation, uh, you know, with somebody who might work in like oil or watercolor or, you know,
Wow.
you know, um, just depends on whatever medium they decide to use. But yeah, I think I'm gonna, you know, release a single. At least this is what's in my mind right now. Every couple of months, you
Yeah.
know, just to kind of tease out what would, you know, constitute, you know, a proper EP.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's just something different. So you have a piece of art, but then there's another piece of art that's, you know, you hope
Yeah.
is kind of a fun and cool representation of the song.
So are you saying you're having an artist create the artwork for your singles?
Hmm.
Very cool. So there's this term called ekphrastic, E-K-P-H ekphrastic, and it means to see a piece of art and be inspired by it and create another piece of art from that form. So there's like ekphrastic poetry, there's probably ekphrastic songwriting, and I've always really loved that term because one, the composition of how it's written is just awesome. You've got like an ekphrastic, an E, a K, a PH, like, oh my gosh, what else could you look for in a word?
That's an ultimate Scrabble word right there, if you
Yeah,
can muster it up.
totally. I really like that. So I also think that I've heard here and there that singles are the way to do it these days in music. Like for me, I'm like, boom, 14 songs, boom, yada amount of songs. It really just depends on where I'm at with what's coming through, you know, how many songs
Hmm.
are coming through, because I find so much that like the songs tell me how it wants to be. Because I was like, oh, okay, I definitely want to include this one song on the upcoming album, but then as I started to put it in between some of the other songs, I was like, this song doesn't even correlate with the themes of the rest of the album. So I was kind of just listening to the art flavor and stuff. But then there's also the whole thing of like marketing, because people's attention spans are like little gnats, you know, especially in this day and age. And that's okay. I think attention spans have widened a little bit because we've watched everything on Netflix, everything on Hulu. I've listened to all the albums I know. I've listened to the podcast. So now I'm like looking for long form, out there, eccentric content as well. But
I feel
singles
like,
are good to go.
I feel like you mentioned it. I mean, everybody has these really short attention spans. It always gives off the impression when you release singles like you have something new to say to people. And you
Yeah.
do, but it's just more of a, you know, it's a slower burn.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, I don't know, sometimes with my artist identity, you know, I've got the version of me that's like, I'm pretty much exactly like I am on stage or right now in front of you as I am in my day-to-day life. But there are things here and there, like, you know, like the depression I mentioned or intense anxiety and stuff like that, that I don't necessarily exactly pull through in my performance, but I'll get on myself. I'll be like, is it coming through in your social media that you're going through a funk right now and you're wondering about your existence and stuff? And I'm just like, it's so crazy that, you know, as much as I put myself into my art, I'm still unique in comparison to how I can portray myself. Like, I can write about who I am and what I think and all of this stuff, but the sheer existence, it's like capturing a movie, you know? And so, as an artist, how do you create clarity in your message and crystallize what it is that your voice is getting at? Whoa, roundabout way to a question.
Wonderful question. Boy. um I think constantly presenting your truest self as a performer is the best way to get your message across. If you if you're singing about any idea with a sense of conviction, most people can snuff out, you know, somebody who's being real in front of you versus somebody that's just, you know, putting on a charade. Um, if you know, people can tell, like, just based on your own lyrical content. Again, in my experience, if you're singing, you know, about something with passion and conviction, people will get that just about every time.
Yeah.
If they feel like you're just trying to do like just too much, like physically with your you know, just natural being while you're on stage, that's another way where people can, you know, say, well, this doesn't feel as sincere as it could.
Right. Well, okay, so for instance, I've started thinking I need to play each gig like the big venues. And so I've started doing that, and you know, I'm like looking at the people in the front row, like smiling at them. I'm like, I'm at the Hollywood Bowl and I'm like winking, like, I see you, you know, and I'm like playing to that big audience, but also it's an authentic thing, you know, of like manifestation and stuff like that. And just enjoying myself on the stage and seeing the bigger picture.
Are audience members different now? Like, since all of this COVID stuff, you know, people are grappling with this COVID-19 situation. Are people, not just distance wise, is there just a different kind of vibe that you are getting from the audience? Because I haven't been out yet.
So I went to Texas. I'm from Houston, Texas. So I played some shows in Houston, outside of Austin, in Georgetown, which is about 30 minutes north of Austin, and then in Fort Worth. So my original gig in Houston, it went well. It was an outdoor venue, so everyone was kind of chill. You were supposed to wear masks from the entry point to your table. Once you're at your table, you can take off the mask because it's kind of like a stationary, you know, X marks the spot thing. My venue in Austin, Texas proper was actually completely closed down. I don't even think the venue is going to open again. But I did book a gig that was 30 minutes north of Austin. And this was in a small college town, a smaller town where everyone pretty much knew each other. So it was pretty amiable, and it was just like back to normal. It was so refreshing to be around that. And some people were wearing masks, some people weren't wearing masks. It just was dependent on how they felt and their comfortability level. That was a small town though, so they already all knew each other. So there's probably a difference in that, as well as the COVID probably breezed by a small town with a little bit more ease. Fort Worth, it was storming, raining the night of the show, so people were acting normal and you know, back to business as usual. But it's Texas, so people are just like, cool, we got our liberty back, no problem, let's get back out there. And then two, it was storming, so there wasn't as many people as I thought there would be at that gig. As a case study, yesterday, I'm based in Los Angeles. I went to a show that was in Orange County. So it was outside, that helps. Normally the venue's outdoor area holds about maybe 150 people, at least 100 or something. And they were doing capacity at 65. And they were already packed to the gills. It was a pretty good band called the Higgs. They're a jam band. And you know, it was the same thing as I mentioned before, just depending on comfortability level. I gave a lot of hugs, I got a lot of hugs, but then on the other hand, I was totally cool with that, with doing that. Whereas other people, I'd do like the elbow thing or just wave. But everyone was being, you know, kind about things and keeping in their own space, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see, like, particularly in a jam band environment, because you're usually like, you're creating your own little ecstatic space, and things can be in such like fun close quarters. I wonder how that kind of environment, you know, is going to just change in the immediate future, depending on when many bands start to, you know, plot tours again.
Yeah, so there is drive-in theaters or like drive-in shows. So one of my friends, I don't know if they're all going to be set up like this. I think some are just strictly drive-in. But some of my friends who are based in Colorado went up to a show in Wyoming, and it was a drive-in show. But I also saw photos from like the event, and it looked like there was an open area for people to congregate in front of the stage. So it was just like less people, more space in between people. But it was pretty much like the setup of a small music festival, you know. But instead of people camping out, they just had their cars in the drive-in parking lot. But that, you know, it's kind of got this like speakeasy element to it.
Huh.
You know, like,
yeah,
don't say anything. I did notice when I left the event yesterday, there was a police car there, kind of just looking at the hotspot in town, because Los Angeles County yesterday closed down bars too, but we were in Orange County, so so that's why they were there, just kind of to monitor the situation. And that's fine. You know, I waved and went on my merry way. I didn't like go have a conversation with them or anything, but yeah. Okay, next question. Okay, is there a specific theme on your upcoming music release, or any themes that correlate through some of your singles coming up?
It's always hard to pinpoint little themes. That's a tough one. I think there's always some sort of, you know, hope and happiness and redemption, and you know, sometimes the feeling of being devastated about something, but just hopping back on the horse and you know, making the most out of a, you know, a cruddy situation. I think those kinds of themes are, you know, sort of, you know, happening throughout this batch of songs.
Or like coming to peace with something. Like, yeah, I've noticed there's a few things that come up in my life and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that relationship ended that way. And yet I'm able to get back up on the horse and just come to peace with it, because everything has its time and place and reason.
Totally. Yeah. So it's going to be 5 songs. They don't have a title yet per se.
Oh.
As a package. The songs have titles, but
okay.
yeah.
So are you gonna do like the title and then that's the name of the release, or are you going to do like part 1, part 2?
I'm thinking title and, name and title.
Yeah.
So kind of like traditional singles.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Have you done any music videos before?
I have. The title track of my most recent EP from 2017, Vision Hazy, I did a video for. And
Yeah.
that was also recorded in the same spot in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay. What made you choose Savannah, Georgia as your place to record?
Because I love ghost towns. I love to like take mini vacations to Savannah. I love good barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
I love ghosts. I like the appearance of ghosts. I
Are there
think
really ghosts in Savannah, Georgia?
absolutely.
Okay.
So
Continue.
ghosts from the Civil War, ghosts from the
Oh.
Revolutionary War. Um, Many parts of historic Savannah were built upon Native American Indian burial grounds.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 1 ton of ghosts just floating around that entire city.
Do you see ghosts, or do you pick up on their flavor when they fly by?
Yes,
You do see ghosts? I see energies.
I do. I'm a bit sensitive in that regard. I can feel presences. I can physically see ghosts. I can hear people speak, as creepy as that might seem,
Yes.
through mirrors. And
What?
yeah.
Have you always
Yeah.
had that talent, or is that something you developed in like your teenage years or something?
Boy, I think I developed it in my teenage years, where I could actually, I may not have heard something, but I could physically see like other, other beings, from like beyond
Yeah.
your own reality.
What?
Yeah.
How do they appear to you? Because for me, they're like bluish figures, and then there's like purple, kind of pinkish figures, which I'm assuming is the easiest. Yeah, like there's one right there. I'm assuming that's the easiest way to classify as male and female, and
Mm.
then there's probably like some aura part to it as well. But how do you see the representation of ghosts?
Usually through your traditional orbs. I can see orbs in a dark room. I have a feeling as to where I should stay away from,
Mm-hmm.
if there are just way too many orbs in one little section of a place. Um, I could see, I see like various orbs in fields. I've seen, and it's weird, but I've seen like, like going or traveling through different parts of Charleston. I've seen, people that are like leaving a battlefield. I've seen like a flag bearer and a drummer like walking
Mm-hmm.
across a relatively desolate road on the way back, on the way I was, on the way back to a place where I was staying. And I thought,
Uh-huh.
oh my God, like what is going on here? Like just like real, like physical looking,
Full figures.
features, full
Yeah.
figures. Absolutely.
That look like you could all like they're almost like 3D, that material that you could reach out
Yeah,
and touch.
definitely.
Whoa, that's pretty
Definitely. I've seen
intense.
people in period dress. I've seen, just women in long black dresses, maybe leaving a funeral,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, revealing themselves because this is a personal anniversary of something that was really, really terrible that happened either to them or somebody that they loved. Like I see a lot of fully formed people, and
Does
it's
that
freakish,
influence?
but it's comforting somehow.
It is comforting. I have my own version of it. I have a lot of like clairsentience, or maybe a clairvoyance and clairaudience. Like I hear a lot of stuff. It's not necessarily something I talk to people about, nor tell them what I hear, because when I first started doing
Yeah.
that, it caused some weird conversations. They're like, "Oh, you're hearing voices," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm just hearing you say something totally different than what you said." So it's like I'm living
Hmm.
in an alternate reality, and they're like, "Are you
Yeah.
seeing anyone for this?" And I'm like, "No." But it's comforting because it's the way that I'm informed, and I pick up on like what's happening in my own reality, in my mind, how I relate to other people, and it gets really descriptive and unique to each situation. Um, I would love to be able to see the figures like you do. Do they influence your songwriting and your art in any way?
All the time.
Do you have a
All the
specific
time.
Do you have a specific story or character that you've written about?
Not a specific character, but I think like some of the overtones to a lot of the abstractness I might, the way that I scene set something might have been influenced or informed by something that I might have seen, like crawling through an alley or just walking out the back door of a house, that kind of thing. And just letting the environment dictate what it's supposed to be, either for the
Yeah.
writer, or for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm vividly recalling that experience, even if I'm not calling out the actual character that I've seen.
Right. That's very respectful to do it in that way, where you tell what is to be told without saying too much.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about your next project. Let's talk about, you sent me 2 songs, so I'm going to play both of them in the podcast. We have Vision
Oh,
Hazy.
Vision Hazy. Yeah.
We've got Vision Hazy and Now or Never.
Yes.
Now or Never. Okay, so remind me what the couple like lyrical hooks are for Now or Never.
It's interesting. It begins with the chorus, so it's a little unorthodox in that way.
Yeah.
You can leave for all I care. Might as well be forever. We've got a 3-2 count. It's now or
Mm-hmm.
never. So I think there's kind of a reference to baseball in there.
Mm-hmm.
If a 3-2 count is basically you've got to make a decision right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to allow something to pass you by, or you're just going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And just you see what happens. Maybe you get another chance, while you're in that 3-2 count, but there's a lot riding on whatever decision you're about to make. So that's kind of a weird juxtaposition in the sense of you have something or somebody who is willing to take that risk. On the same token, they really don't care what the result is.
Mm-hmm.
You can go away, you could go away and never come back, but are you willing to take a risk, at the same time?
Gosh,
There's no accountability, even though you really want to take some sort of a risk.
So you're saying there's no accountability if you take the risk, or there's no accountability if you walk away, or there's either one. It's you're more concerned with self-reliance.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's such a relief to have in some ways, to be able to be like, okay, this is my side of the street, that's your side of the street. Ultimately, we're neighbors, but I'm also just concerned mostly what happens in the perimeter of my yard and household.
And it's not necessarily, being selfish. It's, I'm over here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're over here, but if we can figure out some sort of common ground, cool.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to just carry on in your own existence, perfectly fine, perfectly peaceful too. It's all good.
Yeah, that's really cool. It reminds me of this Walt Whitman quote that I think about often, that is, loaf with me on the grass, loosen the stop from your throat. And it makes me think of, one, just come and chill and relax on the grass, like catch your breath, everything's good. If you want to talk about anything, we can talk about stuff. If you don't want to talk about anything, we can not talk about anything. And then also, however you phrase something, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not concerned with the way that you phrase it. I mean, it does get into the territory of like aggression and stuff like that, if someone was to propose that type of like conversation. But yeah,
But it sounds like where the intent, the intent is. It's not meant to be, mean or evil. It's, whatever words you might use, it's okay. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Wow, what a concept. Okay, so was there a particular life event that led to that idea, or learning that lesson, or writing that song?
I think a lot of weird and sometimes broken relationships may have played a part in that. None specifically, just, you have your trials.
Right. Common denominator is always us, though. That's cool though, because we learn and then we heal those patterns, or adjust to those patterns, or get used to those patterns, however we see fit with moving forward. What album is Now or Never on?
That is on an EP that I recorded. I started recording in 2014. It was then released in 16 called Surely Late.
Surely Late. Do you spell that
Surely.
like Don't Call Me Shirley or like with a U?
I should have spelled it like the first, the first one, like airplane, but
Yeah.
I got a little too serious with it and spelled it Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Very excellent. Okay. So what instruments do you feature on Now or Never?
So on Now or Never, we have producer Ted Comerford on bass.
Mm-hmm.
We have Mitch Easter on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Dominic Kelly from A Fragile Tomorrow on drums. And then we have a little appearance by my friend Jarrett Nicolay, who plays a little bit of kind of like some underneath like banjo riffs and whatnot. That if you listen real carefully, it's there. So
That's nice.
Jarrett plays some banjo. He's a great musician and producer in his own right, and I was really happy that he agreed to be on the track.
That's cool. I like the fact that like in songs, it's sometimes just the like layering that instruments can add, because I'm listening to parts of my upcoming album and I'm like, wow, you really can't just like the guitar is like the production of the synth overshadows the guitar a little bit. And I'm like, but that's awesome, because then when I re-listen to it and I tune into just the guitar, then I can hear the guitar more precisely. And so there's all these different things that make up the soundscape of the moment. I mean, like when I see some of my friends' screens who do electronic music, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you sit there and go, okay, 1, 2, and they've got like 20 million tracks on there. It just is like,
it's a
perplexing.
Pro Tools nightmare.
Pro Tools nightmare.
If they're working in Pro Tools.
Most likely. I mean, I work in Logic. Do you record at home at all?
I cut demos on a little tape recorder, so I'm like as archaic as can possibly be.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Whether it's if it's not a tape recorder, it's just a little voice memo thing that sounds like really stripped down. So it kind of sounds like the first EP in some respects before I properly recorded it. So it just, I don't know. I'm sort of a weirdo in that respect. Just it's got to sound like so bare bones.
You could leave for all I care. It might as well be forever. We've got a 3-2 count. It's now or never. Spring's confused like a robin in the snow on St. Patrick's Day. It's now or never. It's now or never. Spring's confused like a robin in the snow on St. Patrick's Day.
Do you what am I saying? Okay, so you said I like to record my demos and songs on a tape recorder or like a voice memo thing, and that reminds me of the first days of my first music release before I recorded it properly. And then I was thinking, is he talking about when he was mentioned that it sounded like a demo, or that people were saying it's like a demo? So is he saying it sounds like a demo?
Yeah, in some respects, yes. Yeah. I'm always like cutting demos in my head.
Right. I mean, I get these like melodies that come to me in the most random of times, like I'm about to fall asleep and I'm just like, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, oh, that's good. And then I'm like, that is good. And I'm like, I'm literally just about to fall asleep.
I have to pull off the side of the road, if I have an idea.
Yeah.
I have to. I always have a like spare notebook laying around somewhere. I'll write on the back of an envelope. I'm a pack rat. I keep everything, every lyrical idea. Even if it sucks, it might be really good a year down the road.
Totally. And also, like, there's a lot of things that I write, and then like a year later, I'm like, how did I even know that was going to happen? Like, it's almost like a premonition of sorts. Definitely, there's a couple poems that I've written that are so eerily similar to what's going on right now, which can make sense because I kind of like hunker down in that like isolation mindset in general. So maybe that's how it can mirror today.
Yeah. I've written some lyrics where it sounds really great initially, whether it's in the demo or maybe a second demo, but then I reflect on them a little bit, and there have been occasions where I've said, no, that's a different song. I gotta write new lyrics for that part.
Right.
Hang on to it, but yeah, that's a different thing.
Right. And sometimes I just have like a hook that'll appear and I'm like, that's very catchy. And then I build the whole song out around it. And then I love writing that way. And then I have sometimes where it's like the verse, and then I've got to figure out what the rest of the song wants to be as well. And sometimes it's just a melody too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And like listening to the song and the ghosts to tell me like what they want to hear. They're like, oh, we like that one. And they're like, some of the ghosts are like, I don't know, I like the other one better. Okay, so then you sent me another song, Vision Hazy. Tell me what Vision Hazy is about and what inspired it.
Well, that one in my mind it's a little bit on the nose in the sense that it's recalling a friend and character in my life who sadly passed away when we were both about 19. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he passed away in just a fluke accident. He was on his way somewhere. Really, he enjoyed traveling in the middle of the night to different places, and sadly he hit a patch of fog, and the rest was history. Sadly, unfortunately. So it's kind of, it's really just calling out a character that just meant a whole heck of a lot to me when we were in college. And it's just reflecting on just some like pure bliss and innocence that we had together.
Yeah. So did you title the track Vision Hazy because of the fog?
I titled the track. No, I didn't, but I understand why you would think so. No, I think I titled it Vision Hazy because I feel like my life could have potentially been very different or clouded had I not met this guy and became friends with him for a short amount of time.
Really?
Yeah.
What was so impactful about his character?
Just a total free spirit. He kind of forced me out of my own comfort zone. And if if there was something that I didn't really feel confident in doing, he always had a very just unique way of just like getting you to bubble up and just be really enthused about something you never thought you'd be really enthused about. So yeah,
And how,
he was a gentleman and a scholar.
oh my gosh. And how'd you guys meet?
We met in school.
Where's
We
that?
ended up sharing. Yeah, we ended up sharing a dorm together freshman
Oh my
year of
God.
college. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of weird to like be able to write some material about him and reflect on our friendship. Because he's been gone. Gosh, like over 20 years now. It's just insane.
Yeah, that's devastating,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
but it was one of those tracks that or one of those songs that sometimes things crazily come to you within 20 or 25 minutes and like all the pieces are there. And I just recorded that demo, hung on to it, and it wound up being the title track of that last EP. So it was that was really I felt really fortunate to just get something so quickly that way.
yeah. My grandmother passed away recently, and she ended up, I knew this. I knew she was a singer-songwriter, but I didn't understand the breadth of how prolific she was, So they sent her some of they sent us some of her materials that were in, because she was in a old folks home, or whatever the appropriate way to say that is. But she was taken care of by this one group called the Catholic Charities, absolutely lovely people. And
Mm-hmm.
they sent us her stuff, and it's just like, a keyboard that that my mom's going to send me. So I'll be able to play my grandma's keyboard here at the house. And then also just like boxes of sheet music and lyrics, and even like her copyrights with BMI. And it's amazing, because I'm gonna learn some of those songs and get to know her on a different level, and kind of pay honor to her in that way, and just get to know emotionally who she was. I feel like I didn't get to know her as much as I wanted to during my lifetime. And family is so much of a bond that it's like, like I am of the same composition, like we're the same blood. So a lot of those things that she deals with, I'm sure I'll be able to resonate with. In fact, I just like opening up and looking at how much music she had written, I was just like, well, this makes sense, because I was always like, my mom's in the arts and stuff like that, but she's more of like a dancer and more of like an aesthetic art type person. And then my dad is in business. So it's just like, where is this writing element coming from? So I felt a new connection with her looking through her
That's
stuff.
wild. That's
Yeah.
like it's really increasing like a spiritual vocabulary in some
Yeah.
ways. Like what
Yeah.
somebody was, going through. I don't know how old your grandmother was, but maybe in the 30s or
Right.
40s or
So
yeah.
she was born in, I think, the late 30s. What's interesting about some of her songwriting that I looked over, because they haven't sent the boxes to me yet, of the sheet music, but I was just at home in Texas, so I got to see it at my mom's house. It looks like her writing style is more straightforward, in the way that like some of her writings I could see in like a Disney movie, like Love is Magic and Changes and stuff like that. Like these particular concepts written in a clear way, whereas my writing style is I take particular concepts and then just like write in a way that's clear to me, but I'm like choosing all these different words that are, like a tic-tac-toe journey.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Thanks. Glad I
Yeah,
got to share that. I was hoping to say something about her today.
yeah.
Um,
Does she have anything recorded on like a 45 or does she have?
she does have some stuff recorded. It would be totally fun for me to like submit those songs to Spotify or something, or like put them up online. So I'm about to get the stuff, and I'll look through everything, and there's some albums in there too, and I'll decide what's the appropriate way, and just kind of listen to like the universe and God and see what the appropriate way to go about it is. but I'm definitely going to learn the songs and revamp some of my piano skills, because I play the guitar and I know piano. I just haven't really played piano since I was a kid, except for like taking a few classes here and there, like music theory classes where we learn the chords and the notes in each in the scales and stuff like that.
That could open up a brand new door, you know, to start playing on a piano and like, you know, just add another dimension to your writing style. That's so cool.
Yeah, thanks. So can you tell us, is there a particular story that you would like to tell us about a lesson that you learned while being in the music industry, or something beneficial for our listeners to hear in life and in their music career?
Always be sincere. Always be sincere with your writing. Get to know people at open mic nights if you're just starting out. You know, always be professional, always be rehearsed. If you have opportunities to play shows, always treat your sound tech with a tremendous amount of respect, because you might have a great song or two that you have an opportunity to play at an open mic night, but they can also make you sound like crap because they feel like it, because you may not have treated them with respect. So always treat your sound tech with respect. Always treat the venue with respect too. Be on time. Be on time. Stay for stay for bands that are part of the same bill of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Big time.
Yeah. That goes a long way. That's probably a good bit of advice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, like, we met each other at the venue, and it's so funny that you brought up like the concept of like, you can say something to the person next to you, or we can just, you know, cohabitate this space without actually talking. And I was like, I should say something. And then I waited a second. I was like, I should introduce myself. And I was like, hi, I'm Kendra. And you're like, hey, I'm Matt. And then now here we are, you know, having a friendship and being on each other's podcasts and stuff like that. It's super cool. And some of those things happened at open mics too, where I ended up getting booked at the venue later on as well.
Yeah, it's always about fostering relationships in the music industry. So, you know, there are a lot, you know, it's kind of that 6 degrees of separation rule, but sometimes I wonder in the music industry if it's more like 3 or 4.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's a very small world.
I end up meeting people that I'm like, whoa, I didn't expect to meet this person. They're like a high roller and stuff. And then it's like, whoa, it is really kind of 3 degrees of everyone. You just go do, and you're like, whoa, it's so nice to meet you. And I find so many mutual friends as well. And a lot of musicians that I look up to, I've gotten to know through other friends. And it's just like so interesting, the coincidental meetings that I have, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to go out to the show and like meet some friends there. And then they end up going, oh yeah, I know the band, we're going backstage. And it's like, you can meet, you know, those artists and you can have these amazing experiences from all different types of avenues. I personally am someone who likes to, I'm working on this right now, actually. I'm someone who likes to control environments, my own personal environment. So I'm like, okay, should I, what's a good example of this? Okay, so I ended up going to the show yesterday, but I was a little bit tired from traveling the day before. So I was like, I'm going to go to the show either way. I had already decided, but my mind was still like, well, if I don't go to the show, am I going to miss some opportunity of meeting someone? If I do go to the show, am I going to be talkative? Am I going to seem tired? Are people going to want to talk to me? Am I going to want to dance? And just like trying to rehearse and calibrate the whole situation. And then I was just like, you know what? Just go. That's what I'm working on right now. It's just taking my hands out of the cookie jar and letting the universe do as it does and letting God do as it does, instead of me being like, well, if I walk over to that person over there, maybe we'll have a conversation about this. Just let it play out and be along for the journey as well.
Most definitely. One other piece of advice for your listeners could be, if you're a performer, take care of your voice, you know, have a good time. if you drink, you could have some drinks at a bar, but if you're playing, say a string of shows, make sure that you're always, taking care of your vocal cords, and you're eating well,
Yeah.
find some good nutritious food. If like the bar or the club is the only place where you're going to get some really good sustenance at night, try to pick something maybe on the healthier side and stay away from some of the more spicier foods that might be on the menu to, again, just feel better, just
Right.
protect your voice, just protect your just mind, body, and soul, if you will.
That's true. That actually resonates a lot because I haven't been sleeping well the past couple nights, and it comes through. I get super stressed, and then I hold on to the stress right here. Because that's like, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
where's the worst place for this stress to go? And it's like my instrument, but I just
Absolutely.
like energetically, just kind of free it. And it's something I've been dealing with for a long time, is the throat chakra getting clouded up. And then it's like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't just lose 5 audience members by clearing my throat up here on the stage, but it has to happen for this next song. Yeah. Really struck home with that one. Where can we find your music, and where can we follow you on social media?
You can find my music at matttarkamusic.com.
Mm-hmm.
I am on Spotify. I am also on Facebook. I love to use Instagram. That's kind of my bailiwick for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the ability to tell stories that might be happening in my little musical world through pictures and captions and that kind of thing. It's fun, it's easy, and it's engaging. Where else can you find my music? You can find it on Amazon for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if people like good old CDs, compact discs, they can go to CD Baby, or I think Amazon has, some CDs as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Shirley Late is also on vinyl. You can find that, hopefully some independent record shops too.
Very cool.
Around the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask your
Yeah.
clerk, to see if they'll carry that record for you.
That's cool. Have you
So
asked any independent stores to hold your record?
I have.
Very cool.
I have.
I've done that with some books too. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually they'll sell them on consignment, or, like, oh, we'll carry like 4 or 5 copies and,
Mm-hmm.
see what the sales are like. So yeah, I've built some relationships with some record shops as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most are on the East Coast, but I've sent a few out to, I think, San Diego and LA and a couple of places.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we were going to be on the same lineup again out here in Los Angeles. You just reminded me of that. But the ASCAP Awards that you were in town for got rescheduled. Everything got rescheduled.
Everything got sabotaged.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to playing at some point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
I think ASCAP decided to do everything virtually via Zoom. They're probably starting already to plan for next year, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, things should be right on track. I mean,
yeah.
I do send out heartfelt blessings to everyone who's been directly affected by this in all sorts of facets.
Yeah.
I've been affected by it too, and you have as well. And then the people who are being super affected by it, sending them love and hugs and stuff. What are your last words for this evening?
My last words for this evening?
What would you like to leave our audience with?
Take care of your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Always be true to yourself. If you see somebody struggling, pick them up.
Yes, please. That's amazing. Thanks so much for being on my podcast today. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Kendra. This is the Politics of Kendra. Maybe next time we'll talk about politics. What can I say? I've just been doing a lot of research. I want to make sure I get the right message to y'all. So take care. Thank you, Matt, so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Kendra.
Peace.